Here's how you slipped into a stadium in Kansas City on a random Friday in 2023 and somehow ended up inside one of the biggest love stories the world has ever watched. And it did not end at a wedding, because for Travis Kelce, marrying Taylor Swift changed almost everything about how he lives, works, and even how he shows up to record his own podcast. Picture this. It is July 2023. The Chiefs are hosting a preseason event at Arrowhead Stadium, and a tight end named Travis Kelce, already a Super Bowl champion, already a football name every fan in the league respected, has a plan. He wants to hand a friendship bracelet with his phone number on it to Taylor Swift, who is in town for her Eras tour. He waits by the field. He is ready. And then, nothing. She does not come out before the show. She does not come out after either. Because, as Travis would later explain, she has to protect her voice for 44 songs a night, so there is no meeting, no bracelet, no moment. Just a guy standing there, a little disappointed, a little embarrassed, holding a bracelet that never gets delivered. Now most people would let that go. Most people would call it a funny story and move on. But Travis did something different. He went on the podcast he hosts with his brother Jason, called New Heights, and he told the whole story publicly, fumble and all. He said it out loud, that he struck out, that he didn't get the chance. And somehow, that vulnerability is exactly what opened the door. Word got back to Taylor's team about the story. And instead of being a guy who missed his shot, Travis became the guy who was bold enough to admit it on a microphone in front of the world. That is where this story really begins, because not long after, Travis invited Taylor to come watch a Chiefs game at Arrowhead. She showed up. Cameras caught it. And from that single afternoon, the entire internet turned its attention to a football tight end and a global pop star sitting in a suite together, and nothing was ever quiet again. For the next 2 years, their relationship became one of the most talked about pairings on the planet. Every game she attended made headlines. Every outfit she wore in the stands became a topic of conversation. Every touchdown celebration Travis had, people wondered if it was for her. And through all of that noise, Travis kept doing what he always did, showing up to practice, showing up to games, and showing up to record his podcast with his brother, treating it almost like the one normal, unchanged part of his week. Then came August 2025. On the New Heights podcast, something happened that nobody expected, not even the most devoted fans who tracked every rumor. Taylor Swift herself walked into the studio and sat down as a guest. She used the appearance to announce her 12th studio album, The Life of a Showgirl, live on Travis's own show. It was a mic drop moment, the kind of crossover that made headlines around the world within minutes. But here is the part almost nobody knew at the time. While that recording was happening, while the cameras were rolling and the album news was breaking, Travis was sitting there with something else on his mind entirely. He later admitted that the whole time they were filming that episode, he already knew what he was going to do next. He was planning to ask her to marry him, right after they finished recording. Read that again. In the middle of one of the biggest podcast moments of the year, with millions of people about to hear about a new album, Travis Kelce was quietly holding on to the biggest secret of his own life. And within days, it happened. On August 26, 2025, the two of them announced their engagement with an Instagram post that read like something only these two could pull off, joking that their English teacher and their gym teacher were getting married. It was funny. It was sweet. And it confirmed what fans had suspected for months, that this was not just a fling between two famous people, this was serious. From that point on, everything about Travis's life picked up a different kind of intensity. Interviews, appearances, even casual moments on his own podcast started getting scrutinized for hints about wedding planning. At the iHeartRadio Music Awards, Taylor publicly credited him with inspiring parts of her award-winning album, saying being with him made her feel happy, confident, and free. In December, on a late-night show appearance, she called him the love of her life. Every one of these moments added another layer to a relationship that had already become impossible to separate from public life. But Travis being Travis, he handled most of it with humor. At one point, a guest on his podcast, a college basketball coach, jokingly referred to Taylor as his wife before they were even married, saying something like, "You have to ask your wife." And instead of correcting him, instead of clarifying they were still just engaged, Travis played right along, joking back about telling his sweetie he was thinking about returning to college sports. That one clip spread everywhere. Fans debated for days whether it meant they had secretly married already. It hadn't happened yet, but the moment showed just how used to the idea Travis already was, how naturally the word wife had started fitting into his everyday life even before it was official. Then in the middle of 2026, the real change arrived. Word started spreading that a wedding was being planned at one of the most iconic venues imaginable, Madison Square Garden in New York City. Just days before it happened, the couple made an announcement that surprised a lot of people who expected the headlines to only be about dresses and guest lists. They revealed a joint $26 million donation, split across 20 different charities, including children's hospitals and food banks around the country. It was a reminder that for two people who could have kept the entire event private and self-focused, they chose instead to use the spotlight for something bigger than themselves right before their biggest day. On July 3, 2026, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift got married. The ceremony took place inside Madison Square Garden, a closed-roof, private, controlled environment for two of the most photographed people on Earth. Very little from inside those walls became public. No leaked photos flooding the internet, no details splashed across every entertainment site by morning. For a couple that lives almost every part of their lives in front of cameras, that kind of privacy on their most personal day was itself remarkable. What did leak out, eventually, came from people who were actually there. An insider later described a moment during the vows, when Travis was making a promise to protect Taylor forever, and Taylor became visibly emotional hearing it. But here is the twist nobody expected. It was not the bride who ended up more emotional that day. According to a guest who attended the wedding, it was Travis himself who could barely hold it together. He stayed composed enough to get through the ceremony, but by most accounts, he was the one more overcome with emotion, not her. For a guy known across the NFL for his energy, his loud personality, his fearless attitude on the field, that quiet, vulnerable moment at the altar told a very different story about who he really is underneath all that confidence. Now here is where things get interesting, because 5 days after the wedding, on July 8th, Travis was right back in the New Heights studio, recording an episode with his brother Jason and special guest Tom Brady, closing out the football season of the podcast before heading off to training camp. Anyone expecting Travis to spend that episode gushing about wedding details was in for a surprise. He barely mentioned it. No detailed play-by-play of the big day, no emotional recap for the microphones. In fact, the episode had likely been recorded before the wedding even happened, which explained why there was almost no direct wedding talk at all. Instead, Travis used that episode to look back at the entire season, and that is when the real reveal happened. Talking about how the season had started and ended, he reflected out loud that the year had begun with Taylor appearing on the podcast and was now ending with Tom Brady sitting across from him. He called both moments epic in their own way. And then he went further, finally confirming publicly, for the first time on his own show, what fans had suspected for almost a year. During that very episode where Taylor announced her album, the entire time they were recording, he already knew he was about to propose. He said the beginning of that season, the part with Taylor, was the moment he would remember forever. That single confession connected every dot fans had been trying to piece together since August of the previous year. It confirmed the timeline. It confirmed the emotion behind it. And it confirmed that even in the middle of one of the most public, most talked about relationships in modern celebrity history, Travis Kelce still found a way to keep one secret close to his chest until he was ready to share it in his own time, on his own show, in his own words. So how has his life actually changed since marrying Taylor Swift? On the surface, not much looks different. He is still doing his podcast every week with his brother. He is still heading into training camp for another NFL season. He still jokes around with guests, still talks football, still shows up as the same energetic, easygoing guy fans have followed for years. But underneath that surface, everything has shifted. He is no longer just an NFL tight end who happens to be famous. He is part of one of the most watched marriages on the planet, someone whose casual jokes on a podcast get analyzed by millions, whose wedding vows become national news even without a single photo leaking, and whose quiet emotional moments at the altar somehow reveal more about him than years of interviews ever did. And maybe that is the real story here. Not the wedding itself, not the $26 million donation, not even the years of rumors and speculation, but the fact that through all of it, the proposal he planned in secret during a podcast recording, the emotional vows at Madison Square Garden, the quiet return to work just days later, Travis Kelce has managed to stay exactly who he was before any of this started. Married life has not turned him into a different person. It has simply given the whole world a front-row seat to who he already was, a guy who plans big moments quietly, feels things deeply even when he tries to play it cool, and somehow always finds his way back to the microphone with his brother, ready to talk about it, on his own terms, whenever he is finally ready.